Okay, so Apple Music just released their 100 best albums of all time list. Somebody asked me if I would share my thoughts on it, and I have a lot to say. So before I get into my thoughts on it, here is the criteria for the list as written by Ebro. Side note, I can't stand him, and he will run. But, he says that it's albums that represented a cultural moment for the artist or genre, albums that were complete thoughts, not just collections of hit songs, albums that thoroughly represent culture in production or lyrics, albums that inspired a generation to want to create more music, albums that represent the best in storytelling, musicianship, recording, and production, and whatever this last thing says, because I can't read it because the recording screen is covering it up. But that's kind of the justification for what they did. And they absolutely had to pick favorites. They absolutely had to, and once I get into the list, you'll kind of see that, my thoughts on it. But this is the kind of criteria they did. So starting off in reverse order, here's going to be 100 through 92. Now, I will say I like Solange's A Seat at the Table album. I haven't got to Confessions yet, but I hear good things. Lorde Per Heroine absolutely should be on here. Her writing pop hits like Royals and Team. Just her pen. And I think that was just refreshing to music at that time, what she was doing. And Royals is like 14 times platinum, so people don't give Lorde enough credit as a songwriter. I think it's a great album. Buzzcut Season is like my favorite Lorde song. So Lorde is richly deserved on here, in my opinion. I haven't heard the rest of these. Next up, we got 96 through 69. So SZA with SOS is deserved. She said somewhere, I think it was on Twitter, she basically said that she thought it was disrespectful displacement. But 72 out of 100 best albums of all time is nothing to scoff at, and it's a great album, so I don't know why she said that. But I think that the genre bending on this album is cool. I love stuff like Ghost in the Machine. I even love her classic R&B with stuff like Shirt, for example. Gone Girl sounds like something off of Control in the best way. And speaking of that, I really thought that they would have put Control on there before, just because it's been a little bit longer. You see a little bit more of the impact and stuff like that. And I feel like a lot of people have been trying to rip off SZA's sound since Control and have done so, unsuccessfully. But SOS is the album that I feel like really separated her from her peers, and it's not even close. So maybe that's why they put SOS on there. Maybe it's because it's more recent. I'm not sure. But, there's some food for thought there. This Lana Del Rey album, I have to re-listen to it. I don't remember going up for it whenever I listen to it. Lana Del Rey, for the most part, isn't for me. She just does a bunch of word salad, and I can't really get into it. Mary J. Blige, My Life, definitely deserves to be on here. I think that is a great album. There's no skips on it. And so those are the albums I'll speak on here. Now, 69 all the way through number 43. Stevie Wonder, Intervisions. That is an incredible album. My only skip was the first song. I don't really go up for it particularly. But, they have stuff like Golden Lady, Jesus, Children of America, I'm pretty sure it's called, Living for the City. Just a great album, great songwriting, great 70s moments. So I love Stevie Wonder. I think he's great. So I'm happy with that selection. Honestly, Rihanna Anti, no shit, I don't think it deserves to be on this list. I don't. I would like someone to explain to me what the cultural impact of Anti is. I'll wait. And I wanted to have that note there. Even though I really like Anti, I think that it's Rihanna's best album, actually. I'm kind of shocked that it didn't go with, Girl to Go Gone Bad, for example, or even Loud. But, I don't know. I like the album. I just don't really see why it would be on the list. D'Angelo Voodoo, I remember liking this album. I prefer his first album more, to be honest with you, but I'm not mad at him having a selection on this list. Now 42 through 21, and Janet Jackson, she has Control on here, I believe, and I wish that they would have went with either The Velvet Rope or Rhythm Nation, especially Rhythm Nation. I just feel like it was more impactful, and I just think that it was a better album than Control. I really like Control and the New Jack Swing that was on there, and that kind of bringing it to the mainstream and all that stuff, but I just think that Rhythm Nation is the better album, and most Janet fans would agree, especially having hits like Come Back to Me, which is one of my favorite Janet Jackson songs. Love Will Never Do Without You is an amazing record as well. Black Cat, Rhythm Nation, the song, no skips, and her talking about social issues and just having great pop hits. She did what she had to do with the album. I like Control, though. I'm not really that mad at it, but, that's kind of my thoughts there. Aretha Franklin, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. This might be my favorite Aretha album. It kind of goes between this and Spirit on the Dark. Those are both excellent albums. But, you have the hit Respect on there. A lot of people don't know that that's a cover, but it actually is. And what Aretha did with that was excellent. Don't Let Me Lose This Dream is one of my favorite Aretha Franklin songs. It probably is my favorite Aretha song. I just love that song as well. And I really like her cover of A Change Is Gonna Come and just what she does with that. There's no skips on the album, so I'm glad to see Aretha on there, influential to a lot of vocalists. So I love Aretha. She's one of my favorites. Beyonce Self-Titled. I get why Self-Titled is here because of the impact that it's had. Now music is released on Friday because of Beyonce Self-Titled, and everybody tried to release a surprise album and think that people are going to care. You're literally not Beyonce. And so there were some great songs in here. Jealous is one of my favorites as well. I really love Blow. Drunk in Love was a great song. For me, Renaissance is what self-titled is to everybody else. It's not one of my most played Beyonce albums, but I respect the impact that it has had on pop culture at large, and I appreciate the visuals and what Beyonce did with it, because I think that it takes a lot of guts to surprise release the album. What Beyonce did with self-titled, it's history, so I have to respect it. Billie Eilish, When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, does not deserve to be on this list. I'm sorry. I don't go for this album. There's a few songs that I really liked, like I Love You and The Party's Over. I thought that those were great songs, maybe another song or two. But as an album, I don't really go for it. I think I can appreciate what it did to music at the time, just the soundscape of this album was very different than how anything else sounded. I can appreciate that aspect about it, but the album as a whole, I'm sorry, I don't think that it should be on here, especially at number 30. I mean, like, let's get serious with ourselves. Led Zeppelin 2, I don't remember going up for this album. I think I listened to it a time or two, but I don't really remember being too high on that album. But we got the Beatles, Revolver. So honestly, this is overrated. I said this before. I get what they were trying to do with the soundscape and psychedelics and stuff like that, but I've always said that Rubber Soul and Sgt. Pepper's are better albums, and I just don't think that Revolver should be on here. You should just swap it out with Sgt. Pepper's, and then we can call it a day, but it's just overrated yet again. And now 20 all the way through 1. The Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. I think I like the album for what it was worth. Probably a little bit overrated in my opinion at least, but that's just my opinion. 1989 Taylor's version. You guys know I love 1989, one of my pop bibles, one of the best pop albums of all time. The Taylor's version of it was not that great. I get why they're going to support the Taylor's versions and everything, because, you know, it is what it is, but the original version was better. So it is what it is. And Adele 21, I get why it's on here. Again, it was different for that time. Do I think that it was carried by the singles? Yes. Every time I say that, people jump me, but I'm sorry, it was, because take away the singles, and how good is 21? I'll wait. You know, there's maybe 2 or 3 other good tracks, but it was carried by the singles. I am sorry. But I don't mind Adele being on this list, actually. I like Adele, as I've said before. Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, I'm okay with it. You know, Stevie Nicks, Alone, and one of the songs that she wrote for the album. Yeah, I'm not mad at it. Into the top 10, I'm more familiar with these albums, I would say. Beyonce, Lemonade. I think that for a lot of these artists, they should have just narrowed it down to one album. That way they could include more artists on here. So even though I like Lemonade more than self-titled, they probably should have just stuck with self-titled. But, you know, I like Lemonade. I do. So I'm not mad at it. And Beyonce being in the top 10, I mean, I'm okay with it. I really like Lemonade. I don't know why a lot of people don't go for it. I noticed a lot of men don't really go for Lemonade. I made a whole video about that as well. I'll link it down below. Number 9, Nirvana, Nevermind. I probably have to give this one a re-listen. I like the singles off of it for the most part. I like the Nirvana songs that I've heard, so I'm not mad at it. Amy Winehouse, Back to Black. Absolutely. This was a great album. Tears Dry on Their Own, I believe that it was called. Unholy War, I think that's what it was called. Back to Black, the song. Rehab. There was a lot to like on this album. I personally like her first album better than Back to Black, but Back to Black was probably more influential, and it was her last album, so I'm not mad at it. Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City. So honestly, I might be in the minority here. I cannot get into Kendrick's music. You know, I've listened to this album. I listened To Pimp a Butterfly. I get why people would like it. It just wasn't personally for me, and it's weird because I think he's a talented songwriter, but a lot of his music just doesn't really click with me. Like, he has songs that I like, but albums, it's just never really my jam. So I get the impact and everything that it's had. I'm not going to argue with this placement. Number 6, Songs in the Key of Life, Stevie Wonder. His best album, no skips. Having stuff like Knocks Me Off My Feet, Pastime Paradise, I Wish, Black Man, As is an incredible song. I mean, just hit after hit after hit. And just what a quintessential album. So, of course, he deserved to be this high up with Songs in the Key of Life. I'm sorry. Number 5, Frankocean, Blonde. This is one of my biggest pet peeves of this list, because this album wasn't even as good as Channel Orange. So I don't know why Blonde is here. I really don't. And people pointed out that they did have a deal with him to exclusively release it on Apple, so maybe that's why it's up here. But it's not deserved. This album was not good. This album is so overrated. I never really went up for it. And I like Frank Ocean. I like some songs of this album, but I mean, we have to be serious with ourselves. I never heard Purple Rain, so I can't really comment on it, but I hear good things. The Beatles, Abbey Road. Do I think that it should have been top 10? Probably not. I mean, I love the Beatles a lot, but I just have to be realistic with myself. You know, this could have been a cute top 20, but top 10 and at number 3, I think we should have had it lower, no shade, but there was a lot of great songs on this album. I really love Paul McCartney's Oh Darling as well. I like the medley off this album. There was a lot to like, but I mean, number 3, let's be serious. 2, Michael Jackson, Thriller. I mean, Thriller is one of the best albums of all time, so I mean, Thriller had to be on here. There's no skips on here. Baby Be Mine is like my favorite song of the album. The Lady in My Life is underrated. You have stuff like Beat It, Billie Jean, The Girl Is Mine with Paul McCartney is a really good song. They'll slander it a little bit too much for me, they 8, but I think Safe to Say was better, but I really love Thriller. Blueprint for Many sold so many copies. The impact is there. The videos were there. The artistry was there. So you know how to be done. Number 1, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. This did not deserve to be at number 1. One of my friends predicted it was going to be at number 1, and he ended up being right. I really like this album. I do. I get the praise that it gets. I would not have put this at number 1. I would have put Thriller at number 1 easily, or I would have put maybe Stevie Wonder at number 1, but I just don't think that it should have been at number 1. And maybe it's because, you know, they wanted to surprise her with the dinner and all this stuff, but I just don't think it should have been at number 1. But, you know, I think it's worth listening to. You know, there's some great songs. Everything is Everything, Every Ghetto, Every City, the collaboration with D'Angelo, but, you know, those are my thoughts there. So that's going to be the list in its entirety. And now let me get into a couple of my issues with it. Number 1, they had no Mariah Carey in this list. Mariah Carey is one of the most influential vocalists of all time. There's so many singers that would not be singing if it wasn't for Mariah Carey. She has influenced Kelly Clarkson, Ariana Grande, Christina Aguilera, Beyonce. So, I mean, we need to give her respect in terms of that. One of the best songwriters ever, having smashed hits like All I Want for Christmas Is You. A lot of people don't know that she wrote that. Vision of Love, We Belong Together, Always Be My Baby, Fantasy, Heartbreaker, and the list goes on. And she also has great production work as well. So Mariah Carey not being on this list is just a slap in the face to music at large and to people who appreciate R&B music particularly, because you're really going to tell me 100 best albums of all time and Mariah Carey didn't make the cut? Let's be serious. I'm sorry, let's be serious. So the albums I think they could have went with, they could have said debut, because, I mean, just the melisma that she's having and all the vocal riffs and runs and just the backgrounds and the production on there influenced many singers. People weren't singing like Mariah Carey was, which is why she really popped out whenever she started releasing songs and stuff. So a song like A Vision of Love, I mean, come on, like, just alone vocally, yeah, and it's a great album. There's no skips on it, really. I love this album. I do. It's my favorite debut of all time. If you didn't want to go with that, then you could say Daydream. I mean, it had hits like Always Be My Baby, Fantasy, One Sweet Day, which was number 1 for 16 weeks. You also have great album cuts like A Melt Away. Underneath the Stars was technically a single, but Columbia didn't really promote it, and that's like my favorite song on the album. But again, a really solid album, one of the biggest albums of that year, and so we got to give it its 10s. And then you could also say Butterfly. I think that this is her best album. And whenever they wanted to talk about songwriting and albums that are cohesive and not just a bunch of hits, and you can definitely talk about Butterfly. Butterfly, the song, is very personal to her, and that's what she wished her ex-husband would have said to her. Spread your wings and prepare to fly, for you have become a butterfly. I just love that. And also stuff like The Roof, which is a fan favorite. 4th of July is just a gorgeous soundscape, and often compared to Underneath the Stars, which, like I said, is one of my favorites as well. Breakdown with Crazy Bone and Wishbone of Bone Thugs and Harmony was a great record. Outside was about being biracial. So yeah, very personal for her, and this is when she was really able to start incorporating, you know, hip-hop into her music, and so mixing that with the R&B and with the producers that she worked with. It's a very cohesive album. It's very personal. Her songwriting's top tier. The vocals and the vocal layering is like the best I've ever heard on an album, and a lot of people are influenced by her vocal layering and stuff like that. I mean, listen to Ariana Grande Get Well Soon. Like, where do you think she got the idea to do that from? On Mariah Carey. So, I'm just saying, you know, that's her best album. And then the last album that I think would have been a contender to put for Mariah Carey is The Emancipation of Mimi, because this was like the biggest album of 2005. We Belong Together, number 1 in 14 weeks. Shake It Off was a great song. It's like that was kind of the fire starter for this record, also having great album cuts like Circles and Stay the Night. Fly Like a Bird was a promotional single, I believe. Great gospel record. So I think one of those 4 albums, you can't really go wrong, to be honest with you, because it influenced a lot of people. Yeah, Mariah Carey constantly disrespected and not given her 10s. And that's why I can only take the list so seriously, because no Mariah Carey, you have to be joking. I'm sorry. Also, no Britney Spears. I mean, are you kidding me? How many people has Britney influenced? Let's be serious. And this Black album, I'm sorry, it should have been on top 100. It should have been on top 100. The electro pop all the way throughout this album. Gimme More was a huge song. Piece of Me was a great record. You have underrated stuff on here like Heaven on Earth. I like Toy Soldier a lot. and Why Should I Be Sad is like one of my favorite Britney Spears songs of all time. So it's time we give Britney Spears her 10s. I don't know why Blackout wasn't on the list. Every week people talk about how much they love Blackout, and artists talk about how much they were influenced by Blackout. So Britney Spears Blackout not being on this list doesn't make any sense to me. I'm sorry. Wouldn't have minded a Fiona Apple entry on this list. I feel like she tends to be a critical darling, so for her to not make the list, I'm really shocked. I'm really shocked because this is a great album. My favorite album is Fetch the Bolt Cutters, but I think that this one is just a lot easier to get into, just in terms of the soundscape and stuff like that. It's just catchier, and I love a lot of songs on here, like Paper Bag, for examples, like one of my favorite Fiona Apple songs, A Mistake, you know, stuff like that. So I would have liked to see her on the list. The Chicks, if you wanted to do country, because this goes all the way throughout genres. So I mean, this was a big album for the year, and there's a lot to like on this album. Stuff like Voice Inside My Head, Everybody Knows, the title track. I mean, yeah, this was basically after they got banished for country because they were real and they said, hey, we don't think that we should be doing this war right now. And so they came back and they had a smash of an album. So I mean, give them their 10s if you want to do something country. So yeah, I can only take this list so seriously at the end of the day, because we had some glaring flaws, as I pointed out. We had some placements that I disagree with, as I pointed out. So it just is what it is. It's just going to be subjective opinions. But I mean, no Mariah Carey. This list told me everything I needed to know. It really did. And so let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Do you like the list? Do you not? Are there albums that you feel like should have been included that weren't? And hopefully I didn't forget any album that I feel like should have been included that was too egregious and everything. Those are just some of the first ones that at least popped up to me.